10. The Neptune. The Neptune was a unique Soviet submarine. It wasn't built for military purposes, but instead, it was used for civilian sightseeing tours in the Caribbean. Visitors could take underwater tours at depths of 120 feet, with its deepest dive reaching 180 feet. It was built by Navy contractor Sevmash, which builds giant Typhoon-class subs. Russia's enemies kept a close eye on its construction, believing it was going to be something dangerous. But no, it was just for fun, and to give people a taste of what's lurking below. It made its first journey on November 23, 1992. The submarine itself was 92 feet long and was made of thick steel. Inside, people were comfortable as the vessel had air conditioning and other amenities. It was painted bright yellow, had numerous windows, and absolutely no weapons on board. It was manned by a 3-person crew, including one guide giving information and telling stories to tourists about where they are and what they see. Neptune would make 6 or 7 trips a day. A firm was founded to supervise the hiring of the boat, consisting of a Soviet submarine production factory and an Italian company that controlled certain Caribbean islands. It returned from the balmy seas of tropical Antigua to the frigid Arkhangelsk harbor in White Sea, Russia in 1996. They were supposed to maintain the ship and perform some repairs before returning it to the Caribbean, but something went wrong, and it remained there for more than 10 years, until being sold to a local company for roughly $45,000. The new owner intends to restore it and then move it to Moscow to serve as a museum. 9. 1925 Bugatti. This particular 1925 Bugatti Type 22 Brescia Roadster belonged to golden age of Grand Prix driver René Dreyfus, who ended up losing in 1934 during an intoxicated poker game in Paris. It was handed over to Swiss playboy Adelbert Baudet. Baudet happily left for home with his new car, but unfortunately for him, with no money in his pocket. He couldn't pay its import taxes when he was stopped at the Swiss border. Baudet had to walk away, leaving Swiss officials to dispose of his new prize however they wanted. A 10-year-old Bugatti wasn't worth much back then, so officials decided to roll it into the lake, where it eventually settled 173 feet below the water's surface. However, it wasn't until the summer of 1967, when deep diving equipment was able to withstand 29 fathoms of water pressure, that the Bugatti story became a legend, with the local diving club witnessing it for the first time. In an unconnected and unforeseen event, a local boy was killed at a street fair in 2008, and the local diving club decided to raise the long-sunken Bugatti and donate the earnings to a non-profit charity formed in the victim's honor to discourage adolescent violence. On July 12, 2009, thousands of people observed the long-sunk Type 22 rise from Lake Maggiore. In January 2010, it sold for about $370,000 at the Bonhams auction at Retromobile in Paris. 8. China's Trash Park. In Chengdu, China, there are about 200 vehicles on a small lot. They're known as zombie cars. Because of the significance of the storage space, the location is known as a tyrant's car park. Some of the vehicles have been parked in the same spot for over 2 years while vegetation has grown in and around them. These are just junk cars, either a lot of them are luxury cars. There's 2 Bentleys, one a Bentley Continental GT and the other a Bentley Flying Spur, are each valued at least 3 million yuan, which is $447,627 US. There's also some Land Rovers, Mercedes-Benz, and even a cool motorcycle. All the cars here have one specific thing in common: they were all abandoned by their owners. The majority of the cars are actually involved in ongoing criminal cases, either directly or indirectly, meaning they can't be claimed by their owners. Others have simply been abandoned as they were ready to be scrapped or their owners didn't have the correct paperwork. The cars have become a source of stress for local officials who are unsure what to do with them. Though some have been removed for sale, more and more continue to pile up in the vehicle cemetery. 7. 1974 Ferrari Dino. In 1978, some kids in South Los Angeles were playing in their backyard digging around when they discovered a buried car. After the police were contacted, they brought in a skip loader, along with some shovels, and unearthed the 1974 Ferrari Dino. There were still plates on the vehicle, so the police were able to trace the car back to its owner. It turns out it belonged to a local man who reported it stolen in 1974. It was then given to the insurance company who originally paid for the claim. The LA Times reported that the car was in good condition, which made a lot of people want to buy it. Apparently, that information wasn't true. It was actually in pretty rough shape. After all, it had been underground for 4 years. There was rust on the inside and outside, mud was in the vents, and the skip loader smashed the windshield and engine compartment. The people who buried it went to great lengths to preserve the car, but they forgot small details such as rolling up the windows all the way. The insurance firm displayed the vehicle so that customers could effectively make bids, which resulted in individuals removing whatever they could while checking it out. Eventually, the corporation reached an agreement with the buyer, allegedly a young mechanic, for a sum of $5,000 to $9,000. Later, it was revealed that the owner, Rosendo Cruz, reportedly collaborated with the alleged burglars to attempt insurance fraud. They were expected to send the Dino to a chop shop to be broken up for parts, but instead they buried it with the intention of digging it up later and then forgot where they put it. A real estate developer, Brad Howard, bought the car from Farmers Insurance and had it fully restored. As of 2019, the car has been in exceptional running condition. What would you do if you found a supercar buried in your backyard? Tell us in the comments and hit subscribe while you're at it. 6. Bugatti in the water. In 2009, Andy House paid $1 million for the 2006 Bugatti Veyron. He later got it insured for $2.2 million. In November of that same year, he drove the Bugatti into Gulf Bay outside of Landmark, Texas, to dodge a low-flying Pelican. Unfortunately for House, the incident was captured on camera with no sign of aviary involvement. House then claimed that he lost control when he dropped his phone. However, according to evidence shown in court, House intentionally drove the Veyron into the water and kept the engine running, resulting in the supercar's complete loss. Instead, he was sued for insurance fraud. The lawsuit also claimed he tried to bribe someone to steal the car and light it on fire to collect the insurance money. At the end of the hearing, House had to pay about $600,000 and he received a 1-year jail sentence. 5. Turbojet train. Both the US and Russia tested turbojet trains in the 1960s. The train, like a jet aircraft, is driven by the jet force of its engines rather than its wheels. Turbojet engines were built with the engines incorporated into a railcar, serving as both propulsion and passenger capacity. They were used for high-speed passenger services rather than freight. In 1970, the Soviets developed their own turbojet train, known as the SVL, high-speed laboratory railcar. Capable of reaching speeds of 160 miles per hour, with a mass of 54.4 tons including 7.4 tons of fuel, and a length of 92 feet. Despite its great speed, the design was deemed impractical due to the jet engine's extremely high fuel consumption, which made it extremely expensive to operate. In addition, a small fault in the rail line may have resulted in a disastrous derailment of the superfast train. Today, the last Soviet model sits rusting away in the back of the Kalinin railcar factory near Doroshika. 4. Abandoned cars in Dubai. Many people go to Dubai in hopes of a better life and career, but they're met with a financial crisis and instead struggle, rarely making it to the top. Some buy their dream cars before their careers plummet, which results in them not being able to make their car payments. Most of the time, they abandon their cars and leave town to avoid going to jail. Many have had high-paying jobs and have bought luxury cars from BMW, Ferrari, and Lamborghini. This is why there's a supercar graveyard in Dubai. You wouldn't think that cars worth millions of dollars would be abandoned every year in the city. And it's not just a handful of these cars, but thousands of them. Dubai adheres to Sharia law, and failure to pay your debt becomes a criminal offense. There is zero compassion for not being able to pay or for those who declare bankruptcy. This involves not only foreigners, but also locals who acquired such supercars with financing in order to keep up with their friends, but ended up with nothing but debt. The law strictly states that if they are not able to pay their bills, they end up behind bars. Sometimes the keys to the car are even left in the ignition while they flee to avoid going to jail. The magnificent vehicles left behind continue to accumulate cobwebs over time, since these severe regulations remain the same for everyone. The owners of the vehicles ignore their payment notifications most of the time. This results in their forfeitures. They are frequently uncollected, so they're sent to auction at a lower price. Reports say that an average of 3,000 cars are abandoned in the metropolitan area of Dubai every year. 3. SS Aquarama. Built to serve as a transatlantic US troop transport, the ship, formerly known as the Marine Star, was a Liberty ship constructed in 1945 in Chester, Pennsylvania. It only crossed the Atlantic once before the war ended. In 1952, a Detroit businessman bought the USS Marine Star and spent $8 million converting it into a cruise ferry ship called the SS Aquarama. It was a common sight on Lake Erie, as it transported people between Detroit and Cleveland, with occasional stops in Buffalo. The new Aquarama featured 9 decks with enough room for 160 vehicles and 2,600 passengers, as well as 4 restaurants, 4 bars, movie theaters, and amusement facilities. It was 520 feet long and 71 feet high. Many people remembered it for the magnificence of the Great Lakes. It was retired in 1963 and was parked on a dock in the Detroit River until 1995, when it was taken to Buffalo with the hopes of being transformed into a casino ship. Unfortunately, that plan didn't turn out well. On July 15, 1997, the ship was moved out of Buffalo, much to the delight of locals. 2. Red Star Graveyard. A vast region on the outskirts of Budapest is inhabited by abandoned trains and railway cars. This location is known as the Red Star Train Graveyard, which was formerly known as Istvántelek. This depot was constructed in the early 20th century as a national railway repair facility. In 1902, one of the factory rooms measured 28,704 square yards and was Budapest's largest structure. During its lifetime, the depot was very busy. In addition to servicing operating trains, vintage wagons and locomotives were hauled there for maintenance or renovation before being transferred to the Budapest Railway Museum. However, World War II and the demise of steam trains took a tremendous toll on the depot, and it was eventually abandoned, though the southern section is still utilized for modern train repair. Many of the locomotives intended for the museum appear to have been abandoned, partly related to a lack of funding. The collection of decrepit trains is fairly diverse and can be rather exciting for railway enthusiasts. The location consists of 2 huge depots, a few smaller sheds, and a vast open space where trains are parked. Visitors to this location can witness over 100 locomotives and railway carriages. Rare Hungarian MAV 424 steam engines, German freight carriages, and Soviet cars from the 1960s may all be found at the Red Star Train Graveyard. Old railroad tickets can even be found inside some of the newer cars. A number of the Hungarian steam engines feature a red star on the front, and that's how the people named the area. According to legend, one of the German freight carriages kept there may have been used to transfer Hungarian Jews to Auschwitz during the Nazi occupation during World War II. The Red Star Train Graveyard has become overrun with vegetation over time, and the trains have slowly succumbed to decay. The location appeals to individuals who enjoy abandoned sites, as well as those who are intrigued by trains and history. Aside from the abandoned trains, there is some interesting railway architecture, such as viewing towers built of brick and wood, as well as painted signage positioned all along the length of the station. Access to the location was made much more difficult in the summer of 2017, when guards and dogs were introduced to the security precautions. However, if you have the necessary documents, you can still get access. 1. Expensive barn find. At the beginning of 2018, Warren Kramer of North Carolina contacted barn find hunter presenter Tom Cotter about 2 incredibly expensive historic cars in his friend's garage. The property was vacant and had recently been condemned by the city, with the home and the garage due for removal. It was critical to get the 2 vehicles out and transfer them if they were to be saved. The homeowner's 1966 Ferrari 275 GTB2 and 1967 Shelby Cobra 427 had been sitting in the garage for 27 years. His reliable mechanic had died over 30 years ago in 1991, and the owner was picky about who he hired to operate on his rare automobiles. Even after nearly 3 decades of neglect, classic car insurance provider Haggerty put the vehicle's value at $4 million. Because of the risks associated with transporting such costly goods, no local towing company would relocate them. Cotter had no choice but to move the vehicles himself. They were filthy and crawling with insects and rodents. Both cars were still in shockingly good condition though, for having sat neglected for far too long. The Shelby-built Cobra had just 19,000 miles on it, while the Ferrari, which the owner had bought in the early 1980s for $47,000, had a little more than 13,000 miles. Gooding and Company sold the automobiles as is for $3.5 million at their Amelia Island, Florida auction. The car started right up after being serviced before the event. Thanks for watching. Which one of these abandoned vehicles would you want to take for a ride? Let us know in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.